From the very beginning of time, migration has been a part of human existence. The movement of people from their homes to other cities, other states, or other countries for different purposes like jobs, shelter, or other personal reasons is not new. However, in recent times, Africa has witnessed migration in a new dimension. In 2017 alone, about 36.3 million people migrated from African countries. Relocation abroad, sometimes with a little bit of desperation, has widely become a thing among the youths on the continent. Now, the question is, what in Nigeria is commonly referred to, this in Nigeria, which is referred to as Japa, is becoming a concern, and what can be done about it in Nigeria? This will form the basis of our discussion on the program today. We're talking about the Japa syndrome. Now, that is from the Yoruba-speaking part of Nigeria, which basically means take to your heel, run away. Welcome to another episode of Fafanua Afrika, where we discuss topical issues that affect the African youth. And let me officially welcome you to 2023 from all of us here on Fafanua Afrika. My name is Blessings Mosugu, and today promises to be a very interesting and very insightful one. So don't go anywhere as we'll take you through the next 1 hour.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
Many thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Fafanua Afrika right here on News Central Television. Now, everywhere you go around the world, you find an African youth. No doubt, the African youth is the brightest mind, or one of the brightest minds you find across the world. But if you take a good look around you, you realize that the chances are that if you do not have any plans of migrating, you definitely know at least a friend or a neighbor or a colleague or a relative that has either left or wants to leave as soon as possible. And there you see so many people buying furniture and, TVs and everything, and you're wondering what exactly is going on in Africa. Now, every year, Africa loses 700,000 skilled professionals to the diaspora. I mean, technically, we wouldn't say they're losing because they're looking for greener pastures. But then again, why can't we bring the greener pastures here to Africa? And this figure keeps rising. If we keep losing some of our brightest talents to other parts of the world, then can we continue to say that the young people are the future of Africa if at the end of the day, no young person is found in Africa? And why exactly are the African youth migrating? These are some of the questions that are begging for answers. And of course, we'll have our guests shortly who will join us to dissect these questions. First of all, I'm going to be introducing my first guest, who is ALLWELL OKPI, a researcher and a community manager, Africa Check from Lagos, Nigeria. And of course, I have DAYO, who will also be joining me, a youth development expert, Mandela Washington Fellow, joining us all the way from Maryland in the United States of America. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Also, we will have all the way from Kigali, Rwanda, MILTON TUTU, a growth and marketing manager of Selar. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. All right, so could you all just say something so I know we're on the same page? Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much.
All right, my pleasure.
Hi.
Okay. Thank you, my pleasure. All right, so let's get into it. I'm going to start with ALLWELL, and I'm going to be asking the first question, and that is, why exactly do we record these scary statistics of youth who are migrating out of the African continent? ALLWELL?
Yeah, well, migration, like you said, it's a global phenomenon. I mean, it's a natural reaction to when people find themselves in situations and they look somewhere else and they feel they have better prospects that's sort of the most fundamental reasons why people will decide to move from their home country to another country. Looking at the studies that have been done around this, that the study was done by the I think the More Ibrahim Foundation with the Africa Europe Foundation, and one they found that about 80% of people who migrate, especially from, say, Africa to Europe or other parts of the world, they're essentially moving there because they believe their economic prospects to be better in those climes. And for a large percentage of them, essentially moving because of jobs.
Okay, thank you so much for that, ALLWELL. And now I'm going to be moving to DAYO. We've heard several times that, I mean, of course, it's obvious that the system is not exactly working. And then we've heard several times that the government is not doing their best to keep the youth engaged and keep them employed and all of that. But can we blame the youths for wanting to migrate? Because we also hear that some people blame the youths for not being innovative enough in the sense that they can use what they find around to, make better living conditions for themselves. So rather, they want to go outside of the African continent to start a better life, a new life. So who exactly do we blame? Who do we pin this on? The youth, the government, or the system? DAYO, are you with me? Okay, I don't think we have DAYO, but Milton, if you got my question, could you please do justice to that?
Thank you so much for that question, and amazing take. So basically, when it comes to migration and when it comes to people leaving the country, and I wouldn't say the problem is from the youth. If we have better and good infrastructures in Nigeria, people would want to stay back and do business. People want to stay back, and build a family there, or people want to stay back and just get educated there. But it's literally so coming from the sex, just coming from sex perspective, right? Because that's what I mean. So it's literally difficult for people to run a business smoothly in Nigeria because you get to start thinking about things like overhead costs to buy diesel, to buy fuel scarcity, and most of all of these issues that keep on rising all over and over again. Or even policies from CBN or from the government that will just literally just shut down your business. So I mean, if we have policies, if we have different infrastructures or systems that will make living life easy or doing business easy, for the Nigerian and African youth, people would want to stay back home, and do business. But when you don't have these things, people will, the next thought is that, okay, how can I move to a better place that have better systems, that have better infrastructures where I can easily do my business and live my life.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Milton. While we wait for DAYO to join back, I'll go back to ALLWELL, and I want to ask this very practical question. Now, there's this impression that, people who have left the shores of the country leave on those who are still in the African country, and that is that once you travel out, once you've gone beyond the shores of Africa, you just automatically have a better life for yourself. And a lot of youths have run with that. Without proper planning, you see someone wake up one day and is like, you know what, I want to Japa, I want to leave the country, I want to leave Rwanda, I want to leave South Africa or Nigeria. And they don't exactly know what is awaiting them. They always say the land is not exactly greener on the other side, you just have to water yours. So let us, put to rest this argument now. Is it true that when the youths in Africa migrate, everything just works for them, regardless of how the system is over there? Everything is conducive for them, or are there still struggles that they face? ALLWELL.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a mixed experience for a whole lot of people. I mean, there are different stories of people who have gone over there and their life, let's say, got better in terms of access to amenities, and then probably getting jobs and opportunities to do business. But for some other people, that hasn't been the experience. I mean, there are a lot of people who have moved over there and they've found themselves in situations that are probably worse than where they were coming from, and that a lot of times it results from people not doing a proper research about the country you're going to, how the system works over there. I mean, when you go from here, from Nigeria, for instance, to another country, and you probably assume that things work the way they work in Nigeria, you might get there and realize that it's difficult for you to fit into the system. And so, you know, I was watching a documentary where, you know, some young Africans who had moved to Europe, who essentially were regretting their move because it was difficult for them to get jobs, was difficult. And well, these are people who actually even moved illegally, right? It was very, very difficult for them to settle in to those countries, and others wish they return to their countries. And one particular young man in the documentary was saying that, look, you know, I came over here because I believe what I saw in the movies, right? That, you know, everything is all beautiful on this side, but you know, they never told me that there were homeless people, there were people living on the streets and all that. And so that it's different strokes for different folks, but really getting accurate information about where you're going to and how things walk over there and how you are able to fit into that society is very critical before anyone thinks of making the move.
All right, just like you said, oh, well, different strokes for different folks. Thank you so much for that analysis. Also, thank you, DAYO and MILTON. But please still stay with me. We want to quickly check out the Vox Pop, the opinions of the youth across Africa to see what they are saying about this particular issue. So please stay with me. We'll be right back to talk about it on the back end. But right now, let's look at the Vox Pop.
The main reason why I left was I was stagnant. There was no growth. I was working remote job, actually, which I would say is even way better than a lot of people. But I mean, look at the environment. And a lot of times I go out, I get harassed by police. And for everybody that knows me, I don't even dress in an indecent manner. I always have my hair cut, my beard well shaped out and everything. But at the same time, they just see you and they say, oh, no, this guy must be a criminal. And things like that are just one of the things that basically made me decide that, no, I can't do this anymore. And at the same time, I'd always wanted to further my studies. And I thought, I won't really give me a lot of options the way I wanted. So
I think what most people are looking for is just greener pasture, looking for a better environment to learn, better environment to do research, especially for PhD students, which is very important. Better environment to do research, and also better job opportunities. Because even as a student here, you earn enough to take care of yourself, to take care of your family, which is very unlikely in Nigeria. That's the honest truth. PhD students in the UK, funded PhD students in the UK, in the US, and more than their monthly income is more than what a professor in Nigeria earns. So it's just looking for greener pasture, I think.
The Japa syndrome, an opportunity or a ticking time bomb. For me, I'll say for the Nigerians that are traveling outside the country and for the countries that are accepting them and receiving them, it's an opportunity because the country gets to have the best of Nigerians, the best talent in science, the best talent in technology, the best talent in economics or finances to contribute their quota to the growth of that nation. Why for Nigeria is a ticking time bomb because we are losing our best ends, and for most people, they are traveling out with the intention of not to come back. Many of them are not planning to come back, and for that, Nigeria is losing the human resources that is meant to develop the nation.
Well, thank you for staying with us on Fafanua Africa. We are still talking about the massive migration of African youths across the continent, and we are looking at the reasons. Why exactly is this happening? I still have my guests with me. I have ALLWELL, I have DAYO and MILTON. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for still staying with me.
Thank you.
All right, my pleasure. So I'm going to throw this question at MILTON, and I want us to take a look at the emotional implication of migration. We see that as so many people are migrating in droves, we're seeing that families are being torn apart. We're seeing older people, aging without their children with them. We're also seeing siblings scattered across all over the world. And I just want us to talk about how this is affecting families, what the emotional implications are. I mean, several times we see older people on the streets, nobody, well, maybe not on the streets, but, living on their own and nobody to cater for them. What do you think about this, MILTON?
So I think that's a strong problem, and that's also like a good point that you noted out. I mean, personally for myself, I relocated out of Nigeria to Kigali around last year, and just being far away from my family, it hasn't been easy. I have a family, I have friends in Nigeria. Also, it hasn't been easy, and I also like have conversations, with my friends that are maybe in Europe or right, and they also face the same dilemma, right? So this is a problem, right? This is a problem, but I mean, these are things that literally we have to live with, because for a young person like myself, with my kind of hair, working in tech, and maybe probably driving a car, right? Living in Nigeria, I am in danger, right? So probably we have to literally run. We have to run for our life, but that's why everything still falls down. Everything rises and falls on leadership, right? So everything goes back to the government, right? If we have system infrastructures, good policies, and things that will actually make living easy for Nigeria, I don't think families should be torn apart, right? I mean, and also that's why it's very important, for families and people in the diaspora to, find time to always come back and visit, find time to always spend, time with families virtually, find time to always call, and check in. But still, if we keep having these problems, and if we keep having, these issues that, young people face in Nigeria, right, we are going to have more people migrating out of Nigeria. And apparently, the election that is coming up, is going to be a very strong determinant factor with, to the amount of people that will leave Nigeria here. So we need to make the right decisions. We need to so that we won't be facing all of these problems that we're facing right now as regards people turn apart with their family, and things like that, right? These are important conversations that we need to start having. But literally, this is the reality that we're living in. This is what is happening right now, and we just have to live with it. We just have to live with it. Yeah.
Well, rightly said, MILTON. Thank you so much for that. Let me be sure that we have DAYO back with us. DAYO, are you there? Okay, unfortunately, we'll still have to wait for him a little extra time, but let me now go to ALLWELL, and I want us to talk about the pressure. We just talked about the emotional aspect of it, but let's talk about the pressure. Do you think that most people are relocating because, their friends are going and the things they see on social media are actually pleasing to the eyes without properly planning out their lives? Do you think that that contributes? And if it does, what are the implications? I mean, we've seen cases where people go over there and it's not looking good for them and they become desperate. They don't want to come back, so people don't start asking, oh, what's wrong? What happened? So you see people, African youth sleeping on the streets, constituting nuisances, and it's just it's a cause for concern. What do you think about this, ALLWELL?
Yeah, like I said earlier, a lot of people actually misled by what the information that they have about migrating to one country in Europe or North America or somewhere else. And so there's also that pressure, of people like when you should find yourself in a situation where a good number of your friends have jackpot in the past few years. I mean, you most likely feel that pressure to also make the move, and then you might have it where people are calling you to come join them in one country or the other. But these are all up facing different circumstances, and beyond the attraction is the pressure people feel within their home country. I mean, one of the biggest reason there's the what you might call massive migration from Africa is that Africa's youth population is growing pretty fast, and then in most countries unemployment rates are also quite high, especially among young people. And so when you find that kind of situation, you realize that staying back home is not it's very convenient for a lot of young people, and so they like to seek opportunity out there. But then the point too is that in looking at this in a broader perspective, if you look at the figures, you realize that maybe Africans are not even migrating well enough. The statistics actually put the global migration stock. Africa contributes less than 15% of it. And continents like Asia, for instance, are over 40%. Right? And so you realize that migration is a global issue, and as Africans are migrating, you also finding a lot of migration from Asia, from even Europe, because based on statistics, Europe accounts for about 22% of global migration stock, which means Europe actually has more migrants than Africa in that sense. So it's not peculiar to Africa. People essentially move when they feel they have a better prospect somewhere else, and they go for it essentially.
All right, thank you for that. ALLWELL. Once again, let's give DAYO a try. DAYO, are you with us? We hope that we have you now.
All right, good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon, finally. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Yeah, it's been a lot of battles.
All right, so I'm hoping that you have kind of been following the discussions. We're talking about the Japa syndrome, migration, massive migrations of youth in drove, and we're just trying to look at the causes and why that is. So I want to ask you now, I mean, to officially welcome you for joining us. I want to ask you this question, and we just talked about the pressure. I mean, why people migrate en masse, and we linked it to social media and people seeing what they like, seeing that the system over there is working. Now I would like to know, is there any way that anything that the governments of Africa can do to make these youth start looking at coming back to their various African countries? Because like they always say, youth are the leaders of tomorrow. So if we don't, at the end of the day, have any youth around to lead us, then we're probably headed for destruction. So we know that the systems are not working. We know that, there is lack of employment and so many other things that are malfunctioning at the moment. But what are the things the government can put in place to make the youth start looking back at our direction?
Okay, so thank you for the question. I wouldn't say I've been following, because I think I've been having some issues with the sound. But picking it from the question you asked, the first question we would have to ask ourselves will be, what are things that the young people in Africa are going to get in other parts of the world? So one of the things we'll look at will be education, because the opportunities are out there. Because if you stay back, you don't really have all of those opportunities to even go to school without paying in many universities in different parts of Africa. And of course, these schools, they are able to provide all of that. And of course, they are also smart enough to create an enabling environment for talent, which is a big challenge in many parts of Africa again, because when you look at the work that a lot of young persons are doing, And then you would naturally think that the system is supposed to embrace that and then, of course, support every good thing that they are doing. The system is like the number one factor that frustrates all of that. So, and then, of course, the level of fights in different persons can be different. So that's why some people will just also need to start looking for places where their efforts are appreciated. So if we want to look at the way to ensure that we keep our people there, that we need to ensure that we look at schooling and then ensure that it's not about schooling, it's about really educating the mind because a lot of things that we do, I I narrow it down and I just call it schooling. I don't think that what we do is real education. So when I say it's real education, I know that we teach all of the basics, but then of course the most important part, which is like the place to practice what we're being taught, is not always there. And then of course you can have all of those things here. You can come into school here, and then you are not even paying money; they are giving you money instead. But back home, it's not like that. So it's more of the survival of the fittest every other time. And there's no way you can keep people from staying when all of these things are not in place. Look at it from the angle of work again. You see someone who struggles to go through schooling, graduates from the university, from the polytechnic, from the colleges of education, and then of course to get a job becomes a problem. You have people staying at home for years without getting jobs because they tell you that the jobs aren't there. But then of course you can always look for better opportunities. So we need to ensure that we build systems that work for everyone. And the more we build the systems that work for everyone, not for a few, it will be easier to retain the best the best crop of minds that Africa has produced. Because if you come to the Western world again, you'll see that the best brains here are people migrating from different parts of the world, especially Africa. I was in a conversation with a physical therapist sometime on January 1, and then the person was telling me about how Nigerians are the ones taking the lead in most of the medical things medical innovations happening around in the US right now. And then you just ask yourself that if these same persons go back to Nigeria, will they have the same opportunities to do all of the things that they are doing right now? So we need to create that enabling environment that would ensure that the best brains are able to still be the best while being in their various countries.
All right, thank you for that, DAYO. Now, Milton, I'm going to ask you this question. You have migrated, and I want to know if ever there was a time where you were worried about the effectiveness of the embassies in different countries, the African embassies, especially in the country you're in. So I'm going to ask you the question, how effective the embassies are, because I will use two examples. One, the Russia-Ukraine crisis. We know when it started, there were so many African students there who were schooling there, and we saw some issues of racism at some point where there was a train that was supposed to take the victims in one area from that place they were in to another, the neighboring country, and they started pushing out the African migrants there and taking in their own people first. So it brought up the question of how effective, because I remember vividly, the African countries eventually responded, but they complained about the speed at which they responded. And I'm going to use that in comparison with what happened some few months ago, where there was a threat. I mean, nothing eventually happened, but there was a threat that there was going to be an attack on the Abuja road. And, the US sent warnings to their citizens over here in Africa and, told them to leave as soon as possible, which eventually brought up an issue. But we're not going to go into that. So I just want us to, using these examples, take a look at the effectiveness of the embassies, the African embassies in the Western countries.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. Right, I think personally, we can do better. Right, our embassies, in other like African, both East African, like Western African countries, we can actually do better. Nigerian embassies, we can do better as regards, actually treating its citizens like citizens, because most times when you like visit, most of these embassies, I mean, you're not like, the reception isn't welcoming, right? This reception isn't welcoming, so we can actually do better. I mean, you can hear of stories of probably the reception in UK or something, and how bad it is. I mean, you can find all of this information on the internet and how bad it is, or the embassy in US and how difficult most like the Nigerian officials make it, like just just make, doing things in the embassy or like accessing information in the embassy is very difficult, right? So I think the officials in the Nigerian embassy and like Nigerian embassies as a whole, in different, countries can actually, do better as regards, creating, structures that just make things easier for Nigeria, because literally that's home to us. Whenever anything goes wrong in like any of these countries, that's where that's our first point of contact. That's where we are going to run to. That's where we are going to find shelter. So if where we are going to find shelter is not welcoming, what do you expect of us? You understand? What do you expect of us? So we can actually do better as regards, having a welcoming environment, making accessing information very easy, and just making solving issues and problems of your citizens in other countries very, very easy, instead of people. So for instance, if your passport gets expired, you have to travel back home again to renew your passport. These are easy things that can be done from in the embassy. You understand? These are easy things that can be done at the embassy. You don't have to, travel again to start, or maybe probably go to another country to start, doing all of this. These are things that, can be easily done at the embassy. So we should learn how to, create infrastructures, not just at home, but also, in our different embassies, systems, law and order, literally law and order, so that things can function properly, because everything rises and falls on leadership. So if the people working there at those embassies, can't show a proper, example, or can't show a proper leadership style, what do you expect of the citizens living there, right? Everything rises and falls on leadership, and I believe, we can do better. We can literally do better.
All right, thank you for that, Milton, and very well said. Once again, I would like to ask my guests to be patient with me while we wait to go on this short break. And we'll also come back to talk about this conversation and give you reactions from social media in a very short time. So my guests, please stay tuned. We'll be right back. And for the viewers, don't go anywhere. Thank you for staying with us. It's still Fafanua Afrika, and we have been talking about the mass migration of African youths abroad. We still have our guests, ALLWELL OKPI, a researcher and community manager, Africa Check from Lagos, Nigeria. We also have DAYO Nigeria, a youth development expert, Mandela Washington Fellow, joining us all the way from Maryland, USA. And finally, but definitely not the least, we have all the way from Kigali, Rwanda, MILTON TUTU, a growth and marketing manager of Selar. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for still staying with me.
Thank you.
All right, my pleasure. Now, ALLWELL, okay, I'm going to ask all three of you this question, and I would like to get your various opinions on this matter. I want to ask, how true is this narrative? Because there's this narrative that the African youth has that you can't entirely succeed within the shores of your own country, be it whatever African country you're in. They have this idea that you have to travel out to succeed and then come back, to flex your muscle. So I want to ask all three of you this question now. I'll start with ALLWELL. How true is this narrative that you cannot succeed within Africa?
Well, it's not. It can be true because there are a lot of people who have succeeded in Africa. I mean, there are quite a lot of examples, within the continent. I mean, different countries where young people are, doing great things, succeeding. Well, depending on what your definition of success is, but for some people, well, probably they might think that they're better off, going abroad to, achieve some level of success or in whatever career or area they are in. But it cannot be true that it can succeed in Africa, because there are a lot of examples of people that have succeeded in Africa. And there are a lot of examples of people also who have, probably went abroad and had better opportunities, and probably that was, where they were able to achieve success.
All right, thank you for that. Let me also ask DAYO the same question. Do you agree with ALLWELL, or do you have a different opinion? All right, while we wait for DAYO, let me ask my other guest, MILTON. Do you agree with what ALLWELL has said, or something different?
I 100% agree with what he said. Success is not location dependent, right? Success is a personal, effort that you have to make, and it doesn't matter the location. If you're in Africa and you got nothing, you're going to keep in the same belief pattern. I mean, the paradox, yes, you can like keep Africa or leave Nigeria and come, right? Because I mean, you have that things infrastructure. Right, what kind of things, are you serious like me, like country?
All right, MILTON, if you can hear me, we're having a bit of issue hearing you. I think your audio is having a bit of glitch. We're hoping that that is fixed. If you can hear me, just help us look into that. But I think we also have DAYO here with us. DAYO, are you there?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so I was asking a question. I said there's this narrative that the African youths have that you can't succeed within the shores of your own country. How true is that?
Well, I think it's a terrible mindset, by the way, because for me, migration is not about sort of you can't succeed somewhere. It's just also because it's a global space right now. You can't stay isolated in a place and think that that's all about what you want to do. If you're able to conquer more territories, why restrict yourself to a particular place? And for me, I always say this again, that if you have the mindset of a slave when you're back home, you can't suddenly get to another place and have the mindset of a king. And that's why it's very worrisome. Some of us did not travel because we want to do bye-bye to our countries. No, it's just there are different reasons for traveling. Some people are just traveling for schooling. Some people are traveling to just ensure that there's something else that they're setting up in another place. But if you're not thinking of yourself as an important stakeholder back home, it's not as rosy as people think it is out there as well. And then, of course, it will now boil down to what exactly have you been doing? What have you been committing your time to when you're back home? Do you even still have something that you're looking back to at home, or you just thought, oh, now I've Japa, and then, of course, there must be all ties with everyone back home, or with everything Nigeria and Kenya, Uganda, and what have you. So it's a terrible mindset to think that you can succeed. I know a lot of high achievers who are not in their countries, and it's not because they think they can't succeed. It's just because, again, we've done so much on this continent. I think we should also conquer more territories, and of course, it's just all about ensuring that you also build a wider network around what you do. It's not really the mindset of, well, that's speaking for me and some of the friends that I have that I know. But I agree with you that many people think that, okay, once I step out of the shores of Nigeria, I will suddenly eat it. I will suddenly armor. That's like the slang they use. I'll suddenly armor. You don't armor suddenly. You have to work you build something from the scratch. That's why you see a lot of people doing all sorts of things that you can't even say when they are out there. So we also need to consciously tell the right stories about migration, because you see all of these YouTube videos that would make it look like the moment you step out, you just suddenly become the best person. You have a whole lot of money to throw around. These things are making people desire what is not real. Because the more we tell the story that is real, the more people will also know that you need to ensure that you are very productive back home, so that when you are here, productivity will be something that you're already very used to. So yeah, I don't agree that you have to travel before you succeed. If you can't succeed back home, it's going to be difficult for you to succeed if you're outside the country.
All right, thank you so much for that, DAYO. Now, before we go further into the discussion, let's base our conversation off of this reactions we're about to see on Twitter. Social media has been agog on this issue, I mean, for the longest time about Japa. So let's look at what the youth are saying about the Japa syndrome, also known as migration, on Twitter. Now, Guttin says, each time you walk into any government agency or bank in Nigeria, you see more reasons why there is the Japa syndrome. The system has collapsed beyond redemption and people are no longer migrating. They're now escaping. Adebo Ali Joseph says, Japa syndrome. You can hate your leaders, not your country. There's a difference. Nigeria shall be great. Well, so we're seeing a case of for and a case of against. Anyways, Ms. Bellum says, the last time I saw my triplet brother was 5 years ago, and before that was 4 years prior. Nigeria enforces this Japa culture with youths in search of greener pastures. The family unit is in shambles, and I think we talked about that earlier. When will Nigeria be better? I mean, hopefully soon. Nkem says, a friend told me her department lost 16 lecturers after universities resumed from the 8 months ASU strike. They all jackpot, while some got new jobs elsewhere. This brain drain will continue if we do not vote in a leader that values education. Nigeria is sinking fast. I mean, there is a point that is linked to politics. If we want better leadership, we need to get better leaders. Now, Sosa says, I keep seeing news articles about the brain drain affecting Nigeria, and I'm like, lol. I mean, laugh out loud. Hope you know this is only the beginning of things don't get better. This is only the beginning of things. If things don't get better, can't possibly expect people to be living like that and do nothing about it. Well, she has a point. Anyways, those were the reactions from the youth. I mean, we could see the agitations in their voices. Nigeria will definitely, I mean, Africa generally will definitely get better. But let's go back to our conversation. And I want to go back to ALLWELL and ask this question. Now, we've heard that Canada is having more of the older generation, and they're now trying to get more younger people to join them. And that's why we're seeing a drove of migration, especially to Canada. How true is that, ALLWELL?
Well, it's not just Canada. I mean, Europe, in particular, has, globally, really, youth population is shrinking relative to the older people, except in Africa. It's Africa that we're having a huge boom of youth population, and the trend from different projections, have it that I think that by the end of the century, Africa's youth population will be bigger than the entire population of Europe, and so it's going to happen that the demand for labor force in this country is sort of pulling African youths to fill the gap that exists because they don't have enough young people to fill in the gap in the labor market, and so that is one main phenomenon that is leading to this level of migration. And if you look at it, you see that much of the migration that we're talking about now in Nigeria, as part of Africa, is it have to do with the movement of professionals, right? For instance, I remember in 2018, I did a fact check about the number of Nigerian doctors who are practicing in the UK. I mean, it was quite interesting because that was one of my first fact checks as a fact checker with Africa Check, and found an interesting number that as of then, Nigeria was losing about 12 doctors to the UK, right? About 12 doctors a week, right, to the UK. That is, we did the math and arrived at an average of 12 doctors got licensed to practice in the UK. And I mean, these are doctors who got their primary medical qualification in Nigeria. And that was in 2018. But then I looked at the figures today. That means as of the end of 2022, the number of Nigerian doctors that were trained in Nigeria who are registered to practice in the UK are 10,677, right? And that has a jump from, I think, as of the end of 2021, it was 9,202. So in a space of 1 year, in 2022, 1,475 doctors trained in Nigeria moved over to the UK to practice, right? And if you do that math based on week, you realize that that is about 28 doctors, joining UK from Nigeria every week. Right? So it is that this migrations that it's sort of more targeted in terms of, looking at it from the point of the destinations now, whether it is Canada or US or Europe. There's that specific demand for health workers and different kind of professionals to fill the demands that they have up there. So it is quite true that there is the demand, and they, Nigerians or Africans generally are filling that gap.
All right, thank you so much, ALLWELL. Apologies, because of our time, we'll not be able to go into details, but that is a shocking statistics, having 10,677 doctors who trained in Nigeria practice outside. And now let me ask DAYO this question. Let us not forget that there are some youth who are not traveling or migrating by will. They're actually living by force. Looking at the situation in Africa, the hardship, the crisis, the wars. So I'm just going to quickly ask you, what do you think the African governments can do to salvage that situation, seeing how they are not living out of their own will? They're actually living because of the war inflicted on their countries. What do you think the African governments can do?
So whether they're living by will, whether they're living by force, I think one of the things that is very obvious, or keeps becoming more and more obvious by the day, is that we do not have a system that reproduces greatness on a consistent basis. Because that's why you don't expect that in this age and time the same young persons will stay in the same place. But what needs to happen? Because again, gone are the days when it was more difficult for us to say we're able to get.
Apologies, I think we lost DAYO there for a bit. But Milton, let me just quickly ask you this in very few seconds. What do you think are the implications of youth migration? We've talked about it several times, but could you just point them out for us?
Right, very talented. No, you see people that are very, very good to like other countries, right? All knows spoke out of very so like so I think just like the government should create maybe countries for people.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Milton. I'm sorry I have to rush you and cut you there, but we really do appreciate your time with us. Thank you to all our guests, ALLWELL OKPI, researcher, community manager, Africa Check, and of course, DAYO Nigeria, a youth development expert, Mandela Washington, a fellow who joined us all the way from Maryland, USA, and finally, Milton TUTU, growth and marketing manager of Selar from Kigali. Now, one way to refer to messages sent to us by those before us is through quotes. So let's quickly take you through some quotes that we have for you today. Well, it's been an amazing 1 hour part program, and it's all thanks to our guests for that. Join us again, same time next week. My name is Blessings Mosugu. Till then, have a lovely day.